The fall of the cities of Harappa was not an end of all civilization in India. In fact, it was just the beginning. As we will see repeatedly in history, the story of the end of one civilization is just a prologue to the story of the beginning of another. And so it was that the abandonment of the cities of Harappa was shortly followed by the beginning of the Vedic period in India from around 1500 BCE or 3500 years ago. As the name suggests, this period is named after the development of one of the oldest existing books in any Indo-European language, called the Rig Veda. The Rig Veda is a collection of more than 1,000 hymns called Sukta, which means well said. These hymns were composed in Vedic Sanskrit, which differs from the Sanskrit that we know today. The hymns are in praise of gods and goddesses with three gods of highest importance: the god of fire, Agni, the warrior god, Indra, and a plant from which a special drink was prepared, Som. The hymns were taught by priests to students by reciting each syllable, word, and sentence with really great care. This systematic presentation of content is probably why the text was passed on in such detail over generations before ever being written down. In fact, some of the verses of the Rig Veda are still recited almost 3,500 years after its creation during Hindu weddings and prayers, making it probably the world's oldest text still in use. This brings us to the importance of a system of education. In order to pass down essential information from one generation to the next generation, students and teachers must work together, wholly dedicating their lives in the pursuit of keeping knowledge alive. Also, as proven by the survival of the Rig Veda, a systematic presentation of content is by far the best way to pass knowledge onto the students whose eager minds are the only hope for the future of humanity. Namaste, Namaskaram, Sat Sri Akal, Adab, hi, and welcome to the History of India from our nation's textbooks. The Rig Veda is our primary source of information on how people lived in the northwest part of the subcontinent during this period. Many prayers in the Rig Veda were dedicated to cattle and horses and for blessings for the birth of children. Although we can't be certain, we can try to guess why these prayers were dedicated to cattle and horses and blessings for the birth of children. Horses were primarily used in chariots, which were used in battles. The battles were primarily fought between armies for cattle or for land. And finally, these armies had soldiers who needed to fight the battles. Some battles were also fought over water or to capture people. The wealth obtained was kept by the leaders of the armies, some was given to priests, while the rest was distributed to the people, thus winning their support and goodwill. These battles were generally not fought between regular standing armies. Almost all the men in the culture were involved in war. The more skillful warriors were chosen as leaders. These leaders were called Rajas. These Rajas did not perform the duties of a ruler, such as maintaining a capital city, or a palace, or an army, or collecting taxes. Their primary role seems to be leading men into war. These Rajas were also not succeeded by their sons or daughters in their position. Therefore, they were not like the kings that we know today. The community at large was described by the word Jan or Vish. We find references to the Puru Jan or Vish, Bharat Jan or Vish, Yadu Jan or Vish. Other than the Rajas and the Jan, another group of people is described in the Rig Veda. These are the priests who performed a ritual called Yajna. These priests were called Brahmans or Purohit.
We have hit a keyword. Yajnas.
Hey, that's a good catch, robot voice. Yajna, or its Romanized pronunciation Yajnas, refer to rituals performed in front of a sacred fire, often accompanied with chanting of sacred text or mantras. The Northwest was not the only part of the subcontinent that was inhabited by people during this period. Information about the people in other parts of the country, though not obtained from the Rig Veda, was found from burials and from structures built around these burial sites. Some of the burial sites were marked by carefully arranged stone boulders called megaliths. These were found at a number of locations, such as in the south at Adi Chanalur and Brahmagiri, and the north in Kashmir, and the northeast. The burials had some common features, such as the burial of the dead with distinctive red and black wear pots. Sometimes these burial sites also yielded iron weapons and tools, horse equipment, horse bones, and ornaments of stone and gold. A very special burial site has been found in Inamgaon, located on the river Gaur. The burials here have very peculiar features. The dead here were buried with vessels that contained food and water. While most burials were outside, some were even found underneath houses. So, what did we learn about the lives of those who were buried from these burials? Primarily, we learned that the use of iron had started on the subcontinent. Also, since many families were found buried together, the family system was very alive in this period. Further, archaeologists have found what the people consumed during this period, such as wheat, barley, rice, millets, peas, and sesame. Bones of a number of animals bearing cut marks were also found, indicating that they were used for food, while remains of crab and fish indicate the consumption of seafood. Another important discovery is the discovery of weapons, which were absent in the Harappan civilization. Thus, the people who now inhabited the subcontinent were definitely engaged in wars and battles. The scale of these battles seems to be very small, and the nature of the conflict seems to be very localized. This is also evidenced by the lack of any large contiguous empires on the subcontinent during this period. However, towards the end of this early Vedic period, there were establishments of some major city-states and revolutionary political and religious ideas which preceded the establishment of the first large empire of the subcontinent. In the next video, we look at these major city-states that developed in the subcontinent some 2500 years ago and the social and economic systems that were born into these new kingdoms and republics. I look forward to continuing on our journey in the next video. Until then, be happy, stay healthy, and keep on learning.